He lived a quiet life in a small town where everyone knew each other, but no one knew him deeply. He had a routine that never changed and a house that reflected his solitude. Every morning he would walk to the bakery at the corner, buy fresh bread, and return home. He liked things simple, predictable, and controlled. His work kept him busy enough to avoid thinking about anything more personal than bills and schedules. Most people thought he was cold or distant, but the truth was, he had built walls to protect himself from disappointments and complications. One rainy afternoon, as he was locking up his shop, a woman appeared at the doorway. She was soaked and looking for shelter from the sudden storm. She carried herself with a kind of confidence that made it clear she was used to handling herself even in uncomfortable situations. He hesitated for a moment, considering whether to turn her away or invite her in. Something about her made him pause, and finally he nodded toward the small seating area near the counter. She thanked him and sat down, dripping water onto the floor while he grabbed a towel and handed it to her. Their eyes met briefly, and he noticed a spark of curiosity in her expression. They started talking casually about the weather, the town, and how strange it was for someone to be out in such a storm without an umbrella. She laughed softly, and he felt something stir inside him that he had long ignored. She asked about the bakery, and he explained the history of it and how much effort he put into running it. She listened carefully and asked questions that showed she was genuinely interested rather than just being polite. The conversation flowed naturally, and he found himself enjoying her company more than he expected. Over the next few days, she returned to the bakery under different pretexts. Sometimes it was to buy bread, sometimes just to sit and chat. He noticed that the simple act of having her around made his days lighter. He found himself looking forward to her visits and feeling unsettled when she was not there. He realized that he was beginning to depend on her presence in ways that he had never allowed himself to depend on anyone before. Then came a day when he received a call that changed everything. His family needed him to attend a formal event, but he could not bring his personal life into it. He had no spouse, and explaining his solitude was not an option. In a moment of desperation, he thought of her and made an unusual request. Could she pretend to be his wife for the event? He explained the situation carefully and honestly, letting her know it was only for appearances and would be temporary. She paused for a long moment, considering the request. It was strange and unexpected, yet there was something about him that made her want to help. She finally agreed with a quiet determination. They set the terms clearly. The understanding was simple and practical. They would attend the event together, behave as a married couple, and return to their normal lives afterward. It seemed simple enough on paper, but the reality was far more complicated as they prepared for the event. She started noticing small things about him that she had not before. The careful way he chose his clothes, the way he insisted on arranging his papers neatly, and the quiet intensity in his eyes when he focused on a task. She realized he was a man who valued order and control, but beneath it there was a vulnerability that he rarely showed. He was cautious with words and measured in actions, but his heart carried a depth she could sense even in small gestures. The day of the event arrived, and they stepped into a world that was unfamiliar to him. Crowds of people, conversations, and laughter surrounded them. He held her hand briefly and felt a strange comfort in the connection. People greeted them as a couple, and he realized he had to perform a role he had never played before. She guided him gently through the interactions, showing him how to respond to casual questions and smile naturally. He was awkward at first, but her presence made it manageable throughout. The evening they laughed quietly at small mishaps and shared subtle glances that only they understood. He discovered that pretending to be married was not as simple as he thought. It required patience, understanding, and a willingness to show a side of himself that he usually kept hidden. She, on the other hand, enjoyed the challenge and the chance to see him in a new light. Her playful teasing and gentle advice helped him navigate the unfamiliar territory. By the end of the night, he felt exhausted but also strangely exhilarated. He realized that he had survived a situation he would normally avoid, and that her presence had made it possible. They returned home in silence, but the air between them was charged with a new understanding. Something had shifted subtly in their relationship. The pretense had brought them closer in ways neither of them expected. In the following days, they returned to their normal routines, but nothing felt quite the same. He began noticing her in small ways that he had ignored before. The way she smiled when she found something, musing the way she listened carefully when he spoke, and the quiet confidence that seemed to follow her everywhere. She, in turn, noticed the subtle changes in him, the ease with which he allowed her into his space, the small gestures of consideration, and the rare moments when he let his guard down. They both understood that the pretend marriage had created a bond beyond simple obligation. It was a connection built on trust and mutual respect. They continued their days with small interactions that slowly deepened their understanding of each other. Every shared cup of coffee, every casual conversation, and every gentle touch added layers to their growing bond. One afternoon, as they sat together in the quiet of the bakery, he realized that he looked forward to her visits not just for the companionship, but because she made him feel alive in ways he had long forgotten. She had a way of challenging him gently, making him think differently and pushing him to consider feelings and perspectives he usually ignored. He noticed the warmth in her presence and the way it made his world feel larger. She also began to see him differently. Behind the carefully maintained walls, she found kindness, strength, and a capacity for care that was rare. She admired his dedication and the subtle ways he showed consideration. The pretend arrangement had become more than a necessity. It was a window into understanding and appreciating each other. It turned into weeks, and their interactions became more natural. The initial awkwardness faded and was replaced by comfortable familiarity. They could joke quietly in the middle of a crowd, share glances that conveyed understanding, and laugh at moments that only they noticed. The pretense of the arrangement began to blend with reality in ways that neither could ignore. He started questioning the rules he had lived by so strictly. The rule of keeping distance, the rule of avoiding personal connections, and the rule of maintaining absolute control over his life. Her presence challenged those rules, gently showing him that human connection was not weakness but a strength. It was a realization that slowly began to reshape his perspective on life. She, too, started reflecting on her own life through his lens. She saw the value of patience, restraint, and careful consideration. The quiet moments they shared taught her that understanding and empathy could bridge gaps between people. The experience was teaching them both lessons they had not anticipated when the arrangement began, as the simplest moments became significant. Sharing breakfast before opening the bakery, laughing over minor mishaps in the shop, and walking together through the quiet streets after closing time. These moments created a rhythm that neither had expected. They began to anticipate each other's actions and respond in ways that reflected deepening familiarity. It became clear that the pretend marriage had opened doors to emotions neither had been willing to explore before. Trust was growing naturally without force, and the boundaries that had defined their lives were starting to blur in gentle ways. They were learning to navigate complexity together. By the end of the first part of their journey, they had moved from strangers to companions. The unusual request to pretend to be married had initiated a series of events that was changing both of their lives. He was learning to open up, and she was learning to understand patience and connection on a deeper level. They were embarking on a path neither had anticipated, but both felt compelled to follow because of the subtle yet undeniable bond that was forming between them. After the event, they returned to their routines, but the rhythm between them had shifted in ways neither fully recognized. He continued to manage his shop and daily responsibilities with the same dedication, yet her presence in his life brought unexpected warmth. She found ways to visit without needing an excuse, and sometimes just sat quietly reading or talking softly about ordinary things. Each interaction deepened their understanding and created a bond that went beyond the pretend arrangement. They began sharing simple routines that were previously unnoticed. She would help him arrange the shop in the mornings, and he would notice little details outer that made him smile quietly to himself. She had a way of seeing the ordinary and making it interesting, and he found himself drawn to her perspective on life. The initial awkwardness of pretending to be married had faded, and in its place was a growing ease between them that neither wanted to disturb. During these weeks, he started opening up in small ways. He would tell her about difficulties managing the shop and decisions he found stressful. She listened carefully, offering advice without overstepping. The conversations became more personal, yet comfortable. He began trusting her judgment and began to consider her opinions in matters he usually handled alone. It was a new experience for him, and he found it both unsettling and comforting. She noticed that he was different when she was around. He smiled more naturally and his posture relaxed. The careful control he maintained in public softened in private moments. He shared thoughts about his past and explained why he preferred solitude. She realized that his rules were not just habits, but ways to protect himself from pain and disappointment. Understanding this allowed her to be patient and gentle with him. One afternoon, she suggested they take a walk in the quiet streets after closing the shop. It was a small gesture, but it created a sense of shared space outside the routines of work. They walked side by side without needing to speak constantly. Occasionally, she would point out something interesting or funny, and he would respond with a soft laugh. There was comfort in the silence and connection in the shared presence. A turning point came when he received news about a relative facing difficulties. Normally, he would have handled it alone and quietly, but this time he discussed the matter with her. They talked about possible solutions and how best to offer support. She offered insights he had not considered and helped him see the situation from a different perspective. He appreciated her wisdom and felt grateful that she was willing to help in ways that went beyond obligation. As days passed, they started to share small domestic moments. She would cook simple meals, and he would sit and watch or help in small ways. They learned each other's habits and preferences. These moments created a sense of normalcy and intimacy that neither had experienced before. The bond that had begun in a moment of necessity was growing organically into something real, and meaningful people in town began noticing the change in him. Neighbors who had once described him as distant now saw him smiling and engaging more openly. He was still private, but there was a softness in the way he interacted with others. They could not explain the change fully and did not need to. She understood the transformation better than anyone and watched quietly as he slowly embraced a life that included someone else in it. She, too, was affected by their growing connection. Her days became brighter knowing he might visit or need her advice. She found herself thinking about him in moments when they were apart and noticing details about him that went beyond simple appearance. His quiet determination and subtle kindness impressed her, and she found herself drawn to his presence in a way that surprised her. One evening, he invited her to help with a large order at the shop. They worked side by side, organizing ingredients, arranging displays, and coordinating deliveries. The task required teamwork and careful attention. They moved in a rhythm that reflected familiarity and trust. Mistakes were met with quiet laughter and gentle corrections. By the end of the day, they felt satisfied and connected. During their work, they talked about dreams and fears. He admitted that he had long felt isolated and uncertain about the future. She shared her own experiences of taking risks and stepping into unknown situations. Through these exchanges, they began to see each other as partners, rather than merely companions in a pretend arrangement. Trust was building silently, but steadily. The weeks continued with small adventures. They would visit the market together, take short walks in the evening, and sometimes just sit in the bakery after closing, talking about nothing in particular. These moments were simple, yet profound. They allowed both to see the beauty in ordinary life and the value of companionship. It was in these quiet times that the depth of their bond became clear. Challenge arose when a misunderstanding threatened their growing closeness. He misinterpreted a comment she made and felt slighted. Normally, he would have withdrawn, but instead he spoke about his feelings. She listened and clarified her intentions. They discussed openly and honestly, and in the process learned more about each other. The incident strengthened their relationship rather than weakening eyes. Began to rely on her presence, not just for company, but for emotional support. Her calm and thoughtful approach made him feel safe to express feelings he had suppressed for years. He realized that connection did not mean weakness, but was a source of strength. She understood that his cautious nature required patience, and she was willing to give it. Their bond became evident in unspoken ways. Shared glances, small touches, and comfortable silences communicated understanding that words could not. They knew when to speak and when to simply be present. The trust between them allowed them to navigate challenges without fear of judgment or rejection. They started to share stories of their pasts. He spoke of childhood memories, early struggles, and life lessons. She shared her own journey, challenges faced, and moments of courage. Through these stories, they gained insight into each other's character and values. Respect and admiration grew naturally alongside affection. The pretend arrangement continued to blend seamlessly with reality. The lines between acting and feeling became blurred as genuine care emerged. Each day together reinforced the understanding that they were becoming indispensable parts of each other's lives. The experience taught them both that love and connection often grow in unexpected ways. One afternoon, they decided to work on a community project together. It required coordination, effort, and communication. They discovered a shared sense of purpose and satisfaction in contributing together. The project allowed them to see each other's strengths and resilience in new ways. Their collaboration deepened trust and further connected them emotionally. Even mundane tasks became opportunities for connection. Running errands, organizing supplies, and planning meals became shared experiences that built familiarity and understanding. They learned to anticipate each other's needs and support each other without being asked. It was a gentle rhythm of cooperation that strengthened their bond. By the end of the second part of their journey, they had moved from companionship, born of necessity, to a partnership based on mutual respect and affection. They were learning to navigate life together, balancing independence with interdependence. Each interaction, whether small or significant, added layers to their relationship and laid the foundation for deeper connection and trust. As the weeks passed, their connection deepened and subtle changes became apparent. He began reflecting on rules he had lived by for years, the rules that govern distance, privacy, and emotional restraint. She noticed the quiet moments when he hesitated before sharing a thought, and the rare occasions when he allowed himself to laugh fully. It was clear that the pretend arrangement was shifting into something much more real and profound. One morning, she arrived at the shop with a curious expression. She had noticed a family gathering coming up a few days later and asked if he would consider inviting someone who could accompany them for support. Normally, he would have resisted even the idea of involving anyone else, but he found himself surprisingly willing to consider it. Her gentle persistence made him think differently, and he realized that her presence had given him courage to face situations he would have avoided alone. They began discussing the upcoming gathering carefully, planning how to present themselves and what to say. He was meticulous about details, and she offered creative suggestions that made interactions smoother and more natural. They worked together like a team, balancing his caution with her insight. Even the simple act of preparing became an opportunity for collaboration and understanding. Each shared responsibility strengthened their trust and connection. During their preparation, he confided in her about the one rule he had never broken. It was a principle that defined how he approached life and relationships. Normally, he would have avoided discussing it, but the comfort he felt with her allowed him to be vulnerable. He explained why it mattered and how it shaped his decisions. She listened without judgment and asked thoughtful questions that encouraged him to explore his feelings honestly. The day of the gathering approached. Tension and anticipation grew. He was anxious about the unfamiliar social setting and the possibility of missteps. She offered calm reassurance, sharing small strategies and guiding him through likely scenarios. Her presence became a source of strength, and he realized that his previous rule about strict emotional boundaries might not apply when trust and connection were genuine. The gathering began with small talk and polite exchanges. He noticed her subtle guidance in conversation and the way she helped him navigate tricky questions. People who knew him as distant began to see a different side of him, a warmth and engagement they had rarely witnessed. He felt a quiet pride and relief that he could participate fully without compromising his comfort or integrity. She observed closely, noticing the impact of her influence. He was not pretending to be someone he was not, but allowing himself to interact more openly. The pretense of their arrangement was fading as authentic emotion emerged. Each smile, each shared glance, and each moment of understanding revealed the depth of trust between them. She realized that they were entering a new phase of their relationship, one that required honesty, courage, and emotional openness. In the midst of the gathering, a delicate situation arose. A relative questioned the authenticity of their connection in a way that could have caused discomfort. Normally, he would have deflected or withdrawn, but this time he responded with honesty, guided by her calm presence. They addressed the concern gracefully, showing unity and confidence. This moment became a turning point, demonstrating that their bond was stronger than the constraints of social expectation or personal fear. After the gathering, they walked home in quiet reflection. The shared experience had brought clarity about their feelings and intentions. He realized that breaking his strict rules was not a betrayal of his principles, but an adaptation to life and connection. She saw the courage it took for him to be vulnerable and respected the growth in his willingness to trust. They both understood that their journey was evolving beyond pretense into genuine partnership. Over the following days, they explored deeper conversations about life choices, dreams, and fears. He shared thoughts about future aspirations and the uncertainties he felt. She offered insight and support, encouraging him to consider possibilities that he had previously dismissed. The dialogue was open and thoughtful, fostering understanding and mutual respect. Each interaction reinforced their emotional bond and revealed the potential for deeper connection. They also began spending time in new ways. Simple walks through quiet neighborhoods or visits to familiar places became opportunities for reflection and shared enjoyment. They noticed small details about each other that previously went unnoticed: the way he paused to observe nature, the way she listened intently to his words. These moments built familiarity, trust, and a sense of shared life that neither had anticipated. A challenge emerged when a minor misunderstanding threatened to create tension. He misread a comment she made and felt uncertain about her intentions. Instead of withdrawing, he approached her and expressed his feelings calmly. She explained her perspective, and they resolved the matter through honest communication. The incident strengthened their relationship by demonstrating the importance of transparency and empathy in navigating complex emotions. There, growing intimacy became evident in everyday actions. Shared meals, preparation of simple tasks, and even quiet moments of reflection showed a depth of connection that words could not fully capture. They began anticipating each other's needs and supporting each other intuitively. Trust and care were embedded in routine interactions, creating a foundation for meaningful companionship. One afternoon, they discussed life events that had shaped their personalities and choices. He spoke of past disappointments and lessons learned. She shared experiences that had taught resilience and adaptability. Through these conversations, they gained insight into each other's values, perspectives, and emotional landscapes. Understanding deepened, respect and affection grew naturally as a result of this exchange. They started considering what it meant to have rules in life and relationships. He reflected on how strict adherence to his personal principle had limited connections and experiences. She encouraged him to see rules as guidelines rather than rigid boundaries. They explored ways to balance self-protection with openness to trust and emotional engagement. This reflection marked a subtle but significant evolution in his thinking. During quiet evenings, they shared small rituals like preparing tea together, discussing books, or observing the town from the bakery window. These moments reinforced companionship and mutual understanding. Each action, even when ordinary, became meaningful because of the shared presence and attention to each other's well-being. They realized that connection was nurtured in simplicity rather than grand gestures. Pretense of marriage continued as a backdrop, but its relevance diminished as genuine emotion took precedence. They found that trust, honesty, and care naturally filled the space between them, creating a relationship that transcended the original arrangement. Their interactions were authentic, guided by understanding and the desire to support each other in meaningful ways. Challenges continued to appear, but were met with increasing confidence and cooperation. He approached difficult situations with her guidance, and she respected his autonomy and perspective. Each success reinforced trust, and each small failure became a lesson in empathy and patience. They learned to navigate uncertainty together, developing resilience as a pair by the end of the third part of their journey. The pretend arrangement had transformed into a deeper bond. He had confronted the limitations of his rule and begun to embrace the value of emotional openness. She had learned the subtle art of encouraging trust without imposing change. Together they discovered that connection requires patience, courage, and understanding, and that the rewards of genuine partnership outweigh the comfort of rigid boundaries. Their lives were intertwined in ways neither anticipated, and the stage was set for even greater emotional growth, and Discovery Life continued with its quiet routines, yet beneath the surface changes were taking place that neither of them had fully anticipated. He had begun to notice the effect she had on his thoughts and actions, the way her presence made decisions easier and challenges lighter. She noticed subtle shifts in his behavior, the small moments when he allowed himself to trust and to care without hesitation. Their bond was deepening in ways that transcended the original arrangement. One day, a problem arose that required immediate attention. A supplier had made a mistake, and the shop risked losing an important delivery. Normally, he would have handled it alone, but this time he involved her. They worked together, calmly assessing the situation, making calls, and planning the solution. She offered perspectives he had not considered, and encouraged him to communicate more openly with others involved. The experience demonstrated how well they complemented each other and how trust and partnership could solve problems more effectively. He began reflecting on his life. Rules more seriously. The one rule he had never broken had guided his choices and actions for years. He realized that the principle had served as a shield, protecting him from emotional pain but also limiting opportunities for connection and growth. Her influence made him question whether rules should be absolute or flexible when life circumstances demanded adaptation. It was a turning point in his understanding of life and relationships. Days following the challenge were filled with conversations that explored deeper emotions. He spoke about fears he had long ignored, the loneliness of his earlier years, and the uncertainty of opening his heart. She listened without interruption and offered gentle reassurance, encouraging him to consider possibilities beyond fear. The dialogue strengthened their bond as they navigated vulnerability and trust together. They discovered that connection required courage and honesty more than perfection. A moment arrived when she encouraged him to attend a community event that he would normally avoid. He hesitated but agreed, seeing the value in participating with her support. The event was lively and full of interactions that required flexibility and social awareness. She guided him through conversations, offering subtle cues on how to engage comfortably. He noticed the pleasure in connecting with people in ways that did not compromise his character and the quiet satisfaction of shared success. During this time, their relationship began to show new signs. Shared glances lingered a little longer, touches became slightly more deliberate, and the comfort in silence grew richer. He found himself seeking her opinion in small decisions and valuing her insights more than ever. She recognized that the pretend nature of their arrangement was fading, and the connection they shared had become authentic and meaningful. A delicate challenge arose when he encountered a situation that tested the very rule he had upheld for so long. A decision had to be made that could affect someone he cared about deeply. Normally, he would have avoided breaking his principle, but this time, he found himself torn. She observed his struggle and offered support, not by insisting, but by helping him weigh consequences thoughtfully. It became clear that the situation required more than adherence to rules. It required heart and judgment. He chose to act in a way that broke his long-standing rule. The decision was not impulsive, but carefully considered with concern for the well-being of others. She stood by him, offering encouragement and guidance. The moment was profound, demonstrating his capacity to adapt and the trust that had developed between them. The act marked a significant shift in his life and relationship with her, showing that vulnerability could coexist with strength. Afterward, they spent time reflecting on the choices made and the consequences faced. He admitted that breaking the rule had been frightening, yet liberating. She shared her admiration for his courage and the way he had allowed himself to act with both integrity and empathy. Their conversation was honest and open, revealing the depth of connection that had grown from shared experiences and mutual understanding. They began to explore more of life together. Simple adventures like visiting new parts of town or trying different activities became opportunities to learn about each other and themselves. He discovered the joy of shared experiences and the richness of connection when guided by trust. She saw the depth of his character and the way he approached challenges thoughtfully and with care. Their lives were becoming intertwined in meaningful ways. Everyday moments continued to carry significance. Preparing meals together, sharing walks and quiet talks about dreams, fears, and memories deepened the sense of partnership. They learned to anticipate each other's needs and support each other intuitively. Trust and affection were embedded in daily routines, making the relationship feel natural and enduring rather than forced. The test of patience arose when an unexpected visitor brought tension. Normally, he would have withdrawn into solitude, but this time, he confronted the situation with her guidance. They navigated the encounter together with grace and understanding. The experience reinforced their ability to rely on one another and highlighted the strength of their partnership in the face of challenges. The pretense of marriage continued in public settings, but privately their connection was unmistakable. Shared experiences had created trust and familiarity that surpassed any initial arrangement. They communicated through gestures, glances, and subtle expressions, understanding each other without words. The authenticity of their bond became evident as days passed and interactions deepened. In one quiet evening, they discussed what the future might hold. He admitted uncertainty about change and fear of loss, yet acknowledged the importance of connection. She encouraged him to consider possibilities and to embrace vulnerability as strength. The dialogue emphasized mutual respect and understanding, and highlighted the evolution of their relationship from necessity to choice. Small gestures became powerful symbols of trust and care. Preparing morning coffee together, assisting in shop tasks, and sharing simple stories reinforced intimacy. Each act carried meaning because of the shared presence and attentiveness. The rhythm of daily life became a canvas on which trust, affection, and understanding were painted. Challenges continued to arise in subtle ways, but were met with growing confidence. They learned to support each other through difficulties using patience, insight, and empathy. Each challenge strengthened their ability to navigate life as partners and reinforce the emotional bond that had grown steadily over time. By the end of the fourth part of their journey, the pretend marriage had evolved into a genuine and deeply rooted connection. He had broken the rule that once defined him and discovered the value of openness and trust. She had guided and supported him without overstepping, allowing growth and understanding to emerge naturally. Together, they had faced challenges, made difficult decisions, and built a partnership founded on honesty, empathy, and care. The stage was set for a future where rules no longer limited connection, and shared life experiences shaped the path ahead. Life, after the breaking of his long-standing rule, felt different yet familiar. There was a sense of relief and freedom that neither had anticipated. He moved through daily routines with a lighter heart and a new appreciation for connection. She noticed the subtle shifts in his demeanor, the ease of his movements, the calm in his voice, and the rare but genuine smiles that now appeared more often. Their bond had matured, and the foundation they had built was steady and resilient. Began spending more intentional time together. Simple moments like walking through the quiet streets, sharing tea, or observing the town from the bakery window took on a new meaning. Conversations became deeper, exploring hopes, fears, and plans for the future. He spoke of lessons learned from past solitude and the realization that connection could bring strength rather than weakness. She shared her experiences of courage and adaptability. Emphasizing the value of trust and empathy in human relationships, their days were filled with cooperation and shared effort. Running the shop, organizing supplies, and planning for future events became opportunities to strengthen their partnership. Each task required communication, patience, and understanding. They discovered the joy of supporting each other and the comfort of working as a team. The rhythm of daily life had become a canvas for trust, collaboration, and quiet affection. Challenges continued to arise, but were met with mutual confidence. They faced unexpected issues in the shop, managed social obligations, and navigated the expectations of others. Each challenge reinforced the strength of their bond and their ability to adapt together. Mistakes were met with laughter and understanding, while successes were celebrated quietly with shared satisfaction. Through these experiences, they solidified their connection and deepened mutual respect. A turning point occurred when an unexpected visitor brought a difficult decision. Normally, he would have deferred to rules or avoided confrontation, but this time he approached the 5-second situation with clarity and courage. She supported him by listening, offering perspective, and helping him consider consequences. Together they addressed the situation, thoughtfully demonstrating the trust and partnership they had cultivated. It became evident that they could navigate complexity successfully. When acting together, they also explored shared interests and new activities outside of routines. Visits to markets, walks in quiet neighborhoods, and simple outings became avenues for connection and discovery. They noticed small details about each other that deepened admiration and affection. He saw her intelligence, courage, and warmth more clearly, and she observed his thoughtfulness, dedication, and subtle kindness. Each experience reinforced the importance of presence and attentiveness in sustaining meaningful connection. Even ordinary moments became significant, symbols of care and trust. Sharing meals, preparing daily tasks, and discussing simple matters became opportunities to nurture intimacy. They learned to anticipate each other's needs and respond intuitively. Trust became embedded in routine, and affection was expressed naturally in gestures, glances, and small acts of consideration. Life together felt effortless, yet meaningful. During quiet evenings they reflected on their journey. He acknowledged the fear of breaking long-held rules and the unexpected liberation that followed. She reflected on the growth she witnessed and the mutual respect that had flourished. Together, they considered the future, the possibilities, and the shared life they were building. The pretense that had brought them together was replaced with genuine understanding, and commitment. Moments of playfulness and humor punctuated their days. They found joy in small jokes, shared glances, and the ability to laugh quietly at minor mishaps. These moments reinforced emotional connection and reminded them of the importance of lightness in sustaining intimacy. They realized that love was expressed not only in grand gestures but in the consistent presence of care and attention. A significant development occurred when they decided to contribute to the community together. Participating in local projects and helping others became an extension of their partnership. They experienced satisfaction in shared effort and learned more about each other's values, strengths, and resilience. Their collaboration in community activities strengthened mutual trust and provided opportunities to demonstrate shared commitment. They also addressed challenges from the past that lingered in subtle ways. Discussions about previous misunderstandings and minor conflicts were approached with honesty and openness. Each conversation was guided by empathy and the desire to understand rather than to defend. These dialogues strengthened emotional connection and allowed both to grow in patience, tolerance, and understanding. Through shared experiences, they developed routines that fostered connection. Mornings spent preparing for the day, afternoons managing responsibilities together, and evenings of reflection created a stable and nurturing rhythm. Each routine was imbued with consideration and attentiveness, creating a sense of continuity and reliability. In their shared life, they explored dreams for the future, discussing possibilities for expansion. Of the shop travel and personal goals, he spoke of new opportunities and the desire to maintain balance between independence and partnership. She encouraged thoughtful planning and emphasized the importance of communication and support. The discussions highlighted the evolving nature of their relationship and the integration of individual aspirations with shared vision. A final test came in the form of an unexpected event that required adaptability and cooperation. Rather than fear or retreat, they approached it as a team, using experience, insight, and trust. They navigated the situation with confidence and emerged with strengthened bonds and renewed understanding of each other's strengths. The experience confirmed that their partnership could withstand challenges and grow stronger through collaboration. In the closing weeks of their journey, they reflected on how much had changed. The initial request to pretend to be married had grown into a profound and genuine connection. He had discovered the strength and vulnerability in the value of emotional openness. She had witnessed and supported growth and resilience. Together, they had built trust, intimacy, and partnership that transcended the original circumstances.